we finally have a quorum. In a while.
All right, 7:02, and you are live.
Okay. So, welcome everybody to the May meeting. And let's see, I guess I got to take attendance first. So Commissioner Ainsworth is here, present. Commissioner Baskin, Commissioner Bishop. Commissioner Foster-Rothbard is not yet here. Commissioner Keel, present. Commissioner Pollock here, and Councilmember Davies is here. I don't know if I need to take your attendance now. All right, so let's get started on that. So the first thing I guess to do is to approve the minutes of February something or other. February 8th. Yeah, I think everybody's.
There's no March?
No. Nope, in March, half of us had a high school concert to go to, and then April was also a difficult month, and so here we are. Because last month was not official meeting, so.
Right.
I move to accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Hold on, and here is Mike. All right, so we just. Okay, do I have a second for a second? Okay. And all in favor of approving the minutes of February 8th, 2022, say aye. Aye. Aye, all right, so any noes? And if no nobody abstaining? All right. Then
I wish
minutes-
we had, I wish I had said something about, we really,
I can change.
just add the word deer, possibly? Something community doesn't oh no, whatever.
Technically, that is also true, that the community is determining whether or not any problem is there.
It's implied with the high.
The students just throw it in again.
Yes, deer.
There we go. I don't know, you guys had 3 months to look at this thing, so
I thought we did this already. We looked at it, but we
We did look at it.
did anything. Okay.
No. Okay, so approved.
Oh, so we do know that. This looks fine.
So, okay, I see no petitioners, and so that I have had no correspondence, so that brings us to council number.
All right, so there's really kind of only one thing, well, I guess there's kind of 2 things I can report to you. One, the Neo Park project where they're going to be putting the kind of walkway, pathway, that the Oneida Susquehanna Greenway Committee worked on, kind of getting that approved. The bids have gone out and it should be awarded soon, so that should be moving along.
But this is the bids for actually doing the work, or is this still the study?
Good work. This is for doing, putting the pathway that's going to be along the mill race behind kind of where the field is, and then connect over underneath the Lettuce Highway, and then kind of tee back towards, alongside Lettuce Highway towards where the entrance and exit there, the gate that goes over to New Iona. So there'll be a kind of a path there, so it kind of connects the whole. You know, right now there's a nice paved walkway along the mill race across from where the Massey Field is. So this is going to basically continue that all the way down, and then kind of all the way
Back behind that building area and then to that gate.
Yeah, so I mean, I think ultimately you can enter in to Neo Park from the kind of River Street entrance, if you will, walk along that pathway behind. It's really actually nice back in there. You know?
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't been there, it's kind of a nice area back in there. And then kind of follow that all the way down, and then kind of back down through Catella Park, and then into New Island. So it should be a real nice walkway.
Safer too.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks to the Susquehanna Greenway folks for their work. And, Mike's been on that committee for some time, so thanks for all the work on that. The other thing I think of interest, although not directly related, but I think certainly interesting, in the past, the Environmental Board has always asked for or wanted funds, and it's kind of always difficult, but we've had a nice budget to be able to plant trees. So there's been some other projects that have come up that the Environmental Board has wanted to try to fund. So what I'm proposing, or what I'm putting out there, is that there's a brand new initiative called the Oneonta Community Initiative. I think that's what it is. And it's basically a grant program that the council passed last Tuesday, in which anybody in the city, there's some parameters about it, but anybody in the city that has a project that kind of aligns really well with the comprehensive plan can propose for these small grants, and it's $1,000 being the max, and then you can kind of propose. So I mean, there's all kinds of different projects that the Environmental Board, I think, frankly, everything the Environmental Board has been engaged in would probably qualify under many of these grants. So from basically the underlying idea is that it's improving our community in some way. So I put that out there as something that this board might be interested in. I think they're still kind of working out the details with the application and things. I think those should be available soon to folks if they're not already. Soon, right? So I'm just putting it out there as something that you all might want to keep, as you're thinking about some of the different initiatives that you're discussing, that this will be active shortly, and there's going to be every quarter there'll be a round of grants with $5,000 being the max that they'll give away for each of those particular quarters, and this is going to be for at least this next year and perhaps beyond that. So let's put it out there that might be of interest to this particular group. Any questions about either one of those two?
I do have a question about the OCI grants. It kind of occurred to me to this moment. I mean, I had already thought of projects that Susquehanna Greenway might be interested in applying for, but could we, as an environmental board, apply, or because we're a city committee, would it be individual members of the committee, sort of, with the verbal support or whatever, the environmental board?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the way to go. I mean, I haven't kind of read the fine details to see whether or not the environmental board can or cannot. I don't see why not, but I'd have to look at it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either. I would say that, well, we can always test the water and see what happens. I mean,
And all they say is, no, try to get somebody in a community sponsor, right?
Yeah. Or one of you can. You're all community members. Or again, I don't see any reason why this board couldn't at least make a proposal and try to see if they could get something. It's not going to. Those decisions will not be made by common council. The mayor is going to be appointing a 5-person board, if you will, that will review the applications to see if they're consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so, again, I don't see any reason why not. Just something to kind of think, about things out there. My mind immediately went to some of the projects you all have been working on over the past year and thought, well, there could be some interesting uses for the money for some of the things that you're doing. So, we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, because there's a couple things that we have talked about. Yeah, excellent. All right. So, any other questions for Mark? Sure. Take it away, Jason.
The Deep Street development, is there any update on the timeline for
I
it?
don't have an update on that, but I can certainly ask about that.
They seem to be back at it
Yeah.
somewhat.
Let me ask that in the next council meeting, and I can then get back to you about that.
Hope they'll have the plantings done in time that they can take root
Yeah,
before winter.
absolutely.
Thanks.
I'll keep hoping that, the quicker they get it done, the quicker people can apply to get those apartments.
Yeah.
Any movement on deer?
On deer, so I think I reported this in the last meeting, but so no problem reviewing it. We didn't have an official meeting, but so the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee really looked into the deer, the deer problem, and what this board had recommended, and kind of recommendations were to study it further. We also, the mayor had kind of gone out and spoken to several municipalities about what their deer strategy was. And so we took all that information and reviewed everything, and what we felt as though for the small committee that we have, which is essentially 3 people, 3 council members, that this was a larger task. It was a very involved, when you look at how cities have approached this, it's a very involved kind of project. So we made the recommendation to the mayor that he appoint a task force to first study the problem and understand the kind of scope of the problem. I mean, we know there's a problem. To what extent that needs to be understood? What's the impact on community members? I think that needs to be understood. And then, if there's going to be a program of, and Gina, you corrected me the last time. What's the proper usage I need to be able to?
Oh, recreational hunting,
No, not recreational, but
not the C word.
not the C word. I know that's what I was going to use that again. Let's say strategically removing said deer from particular locations in ways that,
Absenting them.
right.
Absolutely.
But
Living in the city.
those-
There we are. I mean, that's what it is. It's,
yes. Well, no, it's not bow hunting in the city though. It's because it's not bow hunting from the standpoint of bow hunting. I think kind of almost hints at it's open season on hunting the deer. This would not be open bow hunting. This would be a strategic, type of program. I'm not saying it's happening, but it would be a program where they basically draw in deer and they selectively take them down with bows. So bow hunting, it seems to be that it's open to everyone. This is other municipalities have done really select programs where what they do is they vet the people who will be doing this to make sure that they are expert marksmen or markswomen that can go out there and do this appropriately. They have loads of rules in terms of what they can and cannot do. I mean, it was interesting to see that it's, I'm not a hunter, so I have not thought about these types of things, but these communities have thought through every detail. So we figured at that level of detail, if that's the direction that people want to go in, that needs to have a special committee that would review that. So the mayor has taken that recommendation, and I'm not sure where we are with this at that point. I'll follow up with him as well and see if that's something he's going to act upon.
He did mention it to me just when I ran into him at one point, but I don't know what he is with it.
Yep.
I think it's important too to just stress, because people get the wrong idea, this would not be within the city, the hunting.
There's
that's-
work
that's-
capacity.
No, they're not gonna go down the streets and shoot.
No, it would be like in the park.
Well,
That-
right,
that's-
they're not gonna be down in center city.
But that's exactly what that's the task force's, would be the task force's charge to figure out exactly how to be able to do this and to do it safely. In my view of it, there's very few places in the city limits that it can be done safely. Probably only the parks in a few areas, but even those areas I think are problematic. So that, again, no expertise, but I think the task force needs to look at that. And that is the challenge with our deer population, is that we do not have large swaths of, I reviewed pretty heavily that one particular communities, and they had several massive parcels of land within the city, I mean acres, not just a little bit, but many acres, 30, 40 acres, where they were doing some of their kind of strategic targeting. And they would just draw them all in with particular feed places, draw them in and shoot, and always from down in a very detailed program. So again, I'm not saying there is no decision been made on how to deal with it. This is what we want to do, is because of the fact that this is a very involved, there's a lot of pieces here, we felt that there should be a group that should be dedicated to studying this and studying it really comprehensively. Because my looking over everything wasn't just like, all right, let's just get rid of the deer. And so, let's let hunting. It just wasn't that easy. There had need to be a very, very well thought out.
I agree. I just think that a lot of people have this idea that people are gonna wander the streets shooting the deer that are wandering in town. I don't think that's.
No, that absolutely. I mean, that, I would be vehemently against that. I think
Yeah, me too.
the first thing we do is consider safety of everyone.
Absolutely.
And then even the safety of people, if we have a wounded deer on the move, what impact could that have, on vehicular traffic in some of our different areas? So again, I think my thinking is that a task force needs to kind of do their diligence and understand the scope of the problem. Again, is there a problem that's worthy of taking extreme measures? Question. And then If the answer is yes, then what will those measures be? And as all the research shown that there's really only kind of one place where people go to as the most effective way. And frankly, what I read was that many communities didn't feel like it was that effective, because as soon as they took them all down, more came in. So they had to keep on running through these programs and cycling through every year they would have these programs. So I thought that was an interesting finding in a couple of our municipalities in upstate New York. It's a tough problem.
And I appreciate, I think it was, Kevin, are you the one that posted the environmental board on Facebook?
Mhm.
You know, the one you put up there today about not feeding the deer? That was, I think that's a good reminder to get out there.
Yeah, that has been spread out there to the city as well. And just to let you all know that there was a neighbor or a community member who reported somebody feeding the deer out of the back of their truck. And that was then, and they had a photograph of the person doing so. And then the police investigated it and they did cite the person. So that was apparently had been happening for a while and was drawing in a lot of deer into a particular area. And so from that standpoint, that at least has been cut out. So hopefully the word will get out that, you know, not feeding the deer is our first step towards trying to keep the deer out of there. But again, once they've established their routines, they're here. So how do we break those patterns and change things? That was right at the bumpy.
Excellent. All right. Dave, you got anything on the bird and forest?
I do, yeah.
reports? Ooh, got it.
Can't remember the last time I was here, but actually, last time I reported, I sort of broached the topic of revisiting the city code to, I guess, broaden its purpose in terms of protection of trees. Right now, the language we have, at least under the chapter 254, streets and sidewalks, basically gives the city rights to protect city infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't notice any great protection for the trees themselves. So in that regard, I think in terms of bare minimum, it will probably pass muster for our tree city audit. But moving forward, it really doesn't look like a proper tree ordinance at this point. And I did find some other language regarding protection of vegetation under animals, chapter 68, and Parks and Rec has language about not cutting trees, shrubs, etc. So one of the things I'd like to do is obviously take the language that we already have and bring it together to coordinate it, and perhaps build a chapter in the city code for trees itself, because most towns that have a tree ordinance, it's its own chapter, it's its own branch, if you will, rather than a subheading under streets. So I'd like to move it higher on the structure, just to give it better priority. The other thing in the packet, obviously this is kind of like the flagship, I guess, but I just downloaded and printed Ithaca City Code regarding trees. And it is, a lot of the language in it echoes some sample drafts of tree ordinances that can be found on the state website. I don't know where it started, whether they copied Ithaca or Ithaca copied them, but it has very strong language to protect the trees. Granted, they have a city forester on the payroll, which makes a rather significant difference, but I would like to bring more language into our own code to protect the trees. And if possible, you know, if you look at the last page of the packet I gave you, they actually have a permit that people need to fill out. It's free of charge, but if there's going to be any construction work that could impact a city tree in any way, they have to fill out this work permit. That would require a department, you know, a forester to check up on this, but I guess my dream here would be if we could build some language into our own building permit process that ensures the protection of vegetation, trees specifically. One of the things Ithaca does is if a tree needs to be cut down as part of a project, or the contractors inadvertently damage or destroy a tree, they're on the hook for replacing it in kind. So if they cut down a 12-inch tree, they have to plant the equivalent of 12 inches of tree trunk diameter. In a different location possibly, but that's all very interesting to me. Because if we cut a tree down, we should be replacing it. Ithaca doesn't have this, but one other thing I saw in some of the language was the idea of these heirloom or landmark trees that have protection. There are a number of towns and cities in New York that have regulations in place that essentially govern what private property owners can do with their own trees, and that would be a tough fight, and I think that might be a bit of an overreach. Yet at the same time, if we stipulated if there's like an heirloom tree that is of significant maturity, or it's rare or unique to the city itself in terms of its species, that tree should have protection. And that could be something we would look into. But moving forward, I think the next step would be to come up with some language that incorporates what we already have as a matter of policy with some of the ideas from approved tree ordinances in the state, just to run it by this board first to get your buy-in. And the next step from there would be to share some of this language with city departments and stakeholders to get their feedback and just work this process. And it might take a year, but I think it's a good thing to do.
I think it's a good idea worth going for. I would suggest that we might bring in, when we were doing the bee ordinance, Stephen Yearly was very helpful. He already had some draft documents, and I think he was waiting for somebody to bring it up.
Right, that's why I went before the zoning board for my addition on my house. He was waiting for someone to bring that issue up. But they're actually revisiting city code this year, so
he might be a person.
The timing is really good.
So if you want to email me the Ithaca code, anything else that you have,
Sure.
then I can forward that on to him. If people think that that's a good idea, he was really super helpful.
Yeah, he's
in
great.
that language, and then I could keep you CC'd in on that, so that you can then take over.
I don't see anything in here, but I wondered if Tree City had anything about maintaining your inventory relative, so we've got the situation particularly of natural disaster damages and
Yes.
winds and what we just experienced. And so having to restock after a lot of loss potentially. So I just wondered if there's anything in Tree City about something like that.
That's a good question. I don't have the answer, but I can find out.
They say something about inventory or no?
Yes, I mean, if you go to the City of Ithaca website, they have an entire page on their trees with sublinks, and they have the tree inventory online. They also have a city forester who's on the payroll to do these sorts of things. But
You have a city forester in Oneonta?
we have Fred Hathaway, he works per diem, he's an arborist. Yes, and he does a great job pruning and trimming and locating places for planting. He's been involved with the planting, yes, but I think he's also looking for retirement.
Says it is one.
What's that?
This thing, the only other document that you gave me says it is one.
Yeah, it's just that he's not like full-time.
Right, he works per diem.
Okay, with the assistance
He
of
works
the city
hourly.
forester, I mean, there's
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but it's not a.
Yeah. And I don't see us getting a full-time forester. We're not big enough to warrant it, but I think another thing that might need to happen then is to clarify the language of who is responsible for the trees, because that's not as clear as it could be. I mean, right now, this, engineering department has been stepping up in a really great way. So that makes sense. But, yeah, in terms of natural disaster, I don't know whether public, FEMA money or, money that we would get from the federal government for natural disaster, whether that can be used for replanting of lost canopy and.
Or even in a project like, the Huntington Memorial Park, right, it's gonna be a lovely park, but they cut down a bunch of trees. Now, a bunch of them probably had to come down anyways.
We
I
lost
mean,
a lot of trees.
but there's a lot more gone than I had thought there was gonna be, and so, I mean, I know they're gonna probably replace some of those.
And it was a state of emergency. so
It was,
might
yes.
be some of the state money.
Yeah.
But, let's see, what else do I have on my list? There
Before you go
are,
on, I just one thought, I wonder if it's more useful for us to, before we go down the path of specific language
Mhm.
for this legalese document, to think more broadly just about sort of what our goals would be.
I think that's
as
part
a
of it,
committee
yeah.
or subcommittee or something, so that we don't get into worrying about exact wording or the species of that species or something, you know,
Mhm.
as far as broad goals, and then take that to Steve Early and maybe, at one point, the city attorney.
Well, that goes down later on.
Yeah, I mean, we don't obviously want to micromanage. because
Right,
that's
no,
not
no,
fun
but
for
like-
anybody.
That we put the ideas out there, put the goals out there, and then figure out the best way to accomplish those goals.
Right, and part of this is gonna be basically through the Tree City audit, right? I mean, so the Tree City has, if you look at, it's been a while since I've looked at
Mhm.
it, but they have, these are the sorts of things that ought to be in the code,
Right.
the city code for that. So I mean, in some senses, a lot of this has already been,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, done, we just gotta kind of figure
Our
out.
language was updated in 2017 on regarding the trees, but for, I think, Tree City, but it's pretty minimal, I would argue. And I'd like to see more protection for our trees.
And I'll piggyback on what I'm saying too. I agree that we should think about our priorities. And if I remember some of the Tree City, what we might be adding is what we value as the natural resource.
Yes.
It's not just the tree, it's the habitat.
Right, that's
We
part
might
of
also think about estimating the carbon sink. So again, updating it to contemporary
Mhm.
goals that relate to climate change. So there's just a thought,
And,
and it doesn't have to all be in the code, but it's.
No.
and adaptation, right? I mean, so.
Yes.
Our
Right,
mission statement.
How do we adapt
Sorry.
to climate change disasters?
Right, like, okay, there's gonna be flooding, there's certain trees that you wanna put somewhere that might be able to absorb, help it.
Willows.
Maybe ecosystem that will absorb some of that, and there's others that you just don't want to do that with.
I believe you can get free trees from the state for riparian planting.
Okay.
So that, I mean, we have some, I think, down by the footbridge, I think that's part of that project, on the S curve.
The one that survived.
3 or 4.
Okay. Damn deer.
Don't forget the dogs.
That and the neglected watering, probably.
Well, yeah. But anyway, speaking of trees, last time I went to the dump, I saw 6 brand new trees waiting for planting. Hopefully they're in the ground now. Actually, I've been out and about and not checked in as carefully as I could be, but Fred Hathaway has sites, locations for those trees. And speaking of Fred Hathaway, he did go forward with the Arbor Day project. He focused on Valley View this time around rather than trying to do all 3. He's going to set up sort of a rotation from elementary to elementary with the 5th grade.
I wanted to go, but then next thing came up.
Yeah, I mean,
and,
Work came up, but,
yeah, I'm just like,
So
Because he's
that's,
so
that
enthusiastic.
went very well.
Yeah.
the best.
And yes, looking forward in the fall, late October, early November, we will be taking delivery on 20 elm trees. And these will be bare root plantings, so there's, a certain finesse involved with planting them, but doesn't require the same enormous equipment that they had large root balls to deal with. But so yeah, over the next couple months with Fred and engineering, we'll definitely have to come up with places to put them. And that is what I have.
Excellent. All right. So community engagement, still right now just focused on our Facebook page. We now have 95 followers. 5 more and I get statistics. So tell keep your friends about it. In the last month, we've had gotten to 53 people and had 20 people engage with the posts. So that's moving forward. Right now, a lot of it's just, as you follow it, it's just a bunch of things that I'm forwarding on from like the New York State DEC and a few other places like that. But we will move forward on that. That's all I've got for right now. But again, if anybody has photos, that'd be fantastic. Just send them on to me of anything, any environment, any part of the Oneonta environment.
I'll send you an Arbor Day photo for Value.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I posted something about it, but I might have missed it. I will definitely go back and double check that. But yeah, if you can send me some of those photos, that'd be great, because we really want to build up some.
Possibly short video, because bird time, there's a lot of great sounds, especially at the crack of dawn.
Yes, yes. That in my neighborhood. And the sound of buzzing bees.
Yes, they're back.
All right, do you have anything on energy you want to talk about? I don't.
We talked last time, I don't know if we were kind of reiterating what we did last time a little bit, or not.
Sure. Only a couple.
We talked about the state climate law program, and that 25% of the benefit has to come to, is sort of justice and communities. So we, might qualify if it's, I mean, there might be pockets where, again, we might make that argument that somehow that, again, we should have some investment here. And one of those investments relates to transportation, but it's the
Corridor on I.
corridor. Which the corridors have been identified. We're in one of the corridors. I-88 is a corridor for electric vehicle infrastructure investments by the state. And so it's also needs to be sited around, or it will be where people can stop and have a meal and they've got a standard called DC fast charging. So it's not Tesla, it's not what we have on campus, it's the standard that would get people in and out in like half an hour. Yeah, so this could also be an economic development thing, as somebody mentioned. So it kind of goes across some of our interests in the city. So we gotta, hook our wagon to these options so that we're, we get some of the benefits. That was just the bigger,
Yeah,
the bigger
I think
picture.
we're trying to think about kind of a regional, maybe like the
Regional.
Mohawk Valley, or what's that thing Jody was always talking about, like the Southern Tier 8 or something like that? Is that part of? I feel like we're part of like two different economic zones, or at least a minimum, right? There's the Southern Tier 8, there's the Mohawk Valley.
Yeah. Well, the Southern Tier 8 were the frackers. So
That was, a while.
that was a while. That was.
They might have changed it.
They always come back. But yes, we talked about regional solutions on energy. That's kind of where we left it. Is we should be thinking more about that. Especially if we could be some kind of hub.
And especially because the Otsego County Energy Task Force is sort of drifted off.
Question. Well, elections matter, and so we don't have the same people.
Right.
What happened?
That's,
People who were strong advocates?
One of the leading, did not win the election.
So it sits right now, don't know where, and there's a lot of people put a lot of time over the past 4 years, 5 years into that, and it's just kind of sitting there now. I'm not sure what's going on with it. Have you ever heard anything?
No, and Danny took a different job, and he was kind of a driving force. But the community we raised expectations, and then where is it? That doesn't make us look good.
So what was it called, the Otsego County?
Energy Task Force.
Energy Task
There were meetings, there was a series of committees and reports and,
I don't want to be so mad that somehow I dodged that bullet. Is that where it ended up?
Dave was on our, Dave Hutchison was on our committee.
You should be happy.
And so
We spent a lot of work.
we did a lot of meetings. Yeah.
I think we came up with like a 100-page report by the time we were all done. And, right?
And what happened in that report?
Good question.
Was it?
It was taken into and made it to kind of an action plan. Our committee had some reservations about how our report was seen or kind of interpreted, and the action plan that came as a result of it, it wasn't in full alignment with what we had put out there, so.
A consultant was involved in the training part there. Yeah.
So that was the last that we.
Was it ever presented to the county?
I don't know.
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
That just kind of died out of there.
Yeah.
I think follow up with Clark and see, ask him
Yeah, we did.
about it.
Yeah.
I'll ask Clark Oliver, our rep, to the county.
Is that report at least a public document, can be found on the county web pages?
Good question, I don't know.
I don't think so. It never made it.
Because it never made it to the vote or anything like that, right?
But it is, one could have a Freedom of Information Act
Mhm.
requirement fulfilled on that. We have our, whatever, last version of our committee.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that if you want to read it.
Share that. We learned a lot.
Yeah, it was, this was just,
A lot of really good energy going in a particular direction that just seems to have come to an abrupt halt, I think is what it comes down to.
But at least working also with the town of Oneonta and South Side and how on energy seems to make sense. Energy and transportation.
there's not. All right, well, on that note. Yeah, any happier news on transportation or,
That was kind of combined. Oh, it relates to the initiative that we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's what I figured, I was gonna
Yeah.
put that off as something completely separate there.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll move on to public spaces. I don't know where you guys were, that's why I wasn't sure to put it on the tree naming, or the creek naming project, which is probably gonna go down to the, I'll let you guys.
Well, speak up, well,
So we've done some things, I think before, it's been a while, so Mike and I did go to what the town board meeting, that was March, maybe.
got the town support.
Yeah, and they were happy with what we're working on, it was, that went well. And then we, as you know, we communicated with a bunch of like principals and superintendents from the different schools, the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools. And our initial reach out to those school superintendents and principal types was that they're very supportive of the whole idea. And then they gave me names of, a bunch of teachers in each school to reach out to. This is like February, March, which I did. And then I didn't really hear back from many or any. And then I followed up again once or twice with the teachers. And one or two of them I spoke at their house saying, we just don't have time for this.
That was pretty good in the middle school.
Yeah, it was middle school and high school kind of just like fell apart. And then we had, this is just going back into history here, that we did have one or two Zoom meetings that Mike and I organized with some teachers who attended like a Zoom meeting to kind of introduce the idea, go over the proposal, et cetera. And we had we had representatives from both Greater Plains and Valley View School attend that meeting. This was back in like, December, January.
Yeah, it was
Middle of winter now.
Yeah.
Middle of winter. And so then it was, okay, well, we'll revisit this thing in the spring, which is like now. And so then, about 3 weeks ago, Mike and I went down to one of the creeks, which is down by Greater Plains, with about 5 or 6 college students. And so we walked the creek about 5 or 6, about 3 weeks ago, we spent an afternoon, an hour or two walking around the creek. So that, with hopes of sort of getting the college students involved and going into classrooms with the elementary teachers, but we wanted to bring them up to speed about what it looks like and how you might bring it into the school. And then I followed up with that with reaching out to the teachers. And just recently, reached out to the teachers from Valley View and Greater Plains. And one of them wrote me back, she's kind of like, wait, what are you talking about?
Right, I mean, I think the problem was,
So we're kind of like, we have this great idea here, and on paper it's wonderful, but we are having a bit of a problem, I think, getting a space in the classroom.
I mean, honestly, I think we have some of the blame that we were just, in April, Paul and I were both too busy and we were away, and we didn't take the steps to get the ball rolling. And so now we were kind of wondering, with those with those 4 teachers we have at Valley View and Greater Plains, should we still try to push forward? We've now lost the college student volunteers because it's too late in the semester, I assume.
We can
right?
always get those again.
Do we wait till September or push it forward? And I'm not sure. I'm still super busy.
My suggestion is that at this point, I think lesson plans, things like that, the last 6 weeks of scheduling is fixed, right? However, continue to try to have some conversations with these elementary schools about starting up in September, when they're getting their calendar put together, and they can say,
It might be easier, I think there might be a level of exhaustion now among the teachers.
Yes.
Is that possible? You're a teacher, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they taking on something new and like
Yeah, it's,
this time of year, so they,
Oh, yes. I mean, I would even say late August, because that's when
People start really
thinking about, they're thinking about curriculum for the year
and
and.
there's a new energy in people.
Exactly.
yeah.
I was gonna do the same thing, in the last communication to people who we had been communicating with, like about 6 or 7 names, yielded one response, which was like, what?
Right.
so maybe just send a saying, you know what, we recognize that you're busy, we still want to do this, but let's reconvene sometime in August.
The other thing I thought about is maybe, Paul, I guess it's a question of capacity you and I have, that the teachers were still open to having us if we don't try to do the whole project now, but just go,
With the teachers.
either go with the teachers or go out with the students to the creek by their school and talk about, it can be like sort of an introductory teaser, like here's what we're trying to think about, and
Yeah.
I mean, maybe by September they will all
Group
forgotten.
in June. We worked with a group of kids in June, about like a class or so. Those kids may just be maybe dispersed in multiple classes in the fall.
Yeah, I think, and also, every teacher I've noticed is, I think this is,
Yeah.
is a really,
Is timing bad right now?
Yes.
Yes, I would think so.
Okay, the vibe I'm getting from the teachers that I'm trying to communicate with is that my timing right now is really bad.
Yeah.
And it just sounded great back in that sounded good back in the fall. We brought it up because there was energy and enthusiasm.
Right.
but it was also in the, once the academic year starts too, then it's harder to fit things in. So I think if you can circle, if you tell them, look, let's re-talk about this if you're interested in August, then you might be able to have, it might be easier for them to figure out, okay, well, we can put this time here, we can put this time here.
Before coming to this meeting today, the back of my mind was like, this might go better in the fall.
Yeah.
But you could shoot the motivational video in the summer, in the creek.
Yeah,
In the creek, not beside.
Yes.
yeah,
Get some excitement,
yeah, there's still stuff that, and, we can go out and check out creeks as well.
I'm gonna give one more plug to the, it'd be nice if even if the kids didn't come, but if I could get the teachers to walk down there with me, some afternoon. Just to point the creek out where it is.
Well,
Bring lunch.
And then,
Bring them lunch.
We like three things. Did you talk to Adrienne Sage at all?
yeah, she was on the communication list.
She would be she's
She's
the person
awesome.
There were four
who would be
teachers,
on.
there were 4 middle school teachers who we thought would really be interested,
Yeah.
and
She's
they
one.
just said they didn't, I think they shouldn't have capacity.
Somebody
She
wrote an
said
email
she
on all
was-
on their behalf saying, we all
Michelle.
talked about this.
And I can't remember the other 2.
And I'm sure Lucy Michelle would be in on this.
Right, they would all be in on it if they had capacity.
And I think again, if we can get that in at the beginning of before the school starts.
Maybe a nice communication to them might be, let's set a date in August to work on this
Yeah.
next year, because we have more energy. So we've been trying, but just, and it's a good idea.
It's a really good idea.
It's-
And the thing is, and if we only get one school participating right now,
Remember, like,
that's also,
Yeah.
I mean, but, we don't have to worry about, let's get the high school and the middle school and all their schools,
Pilot.
just, if one school wants to do it.
yeah, I'll be happy with one creek
Yeah,
for sure.
one creek.
Remember, like, a couple of months ago, though, like a year ago, we were talking about even like bugs and amphibians and.
Well, it's still not off the table, it's just gonna take some time.
I
I mean, you know, once we get that, and once you get something, I think, set up, and you have a process, and it becomes part of this thing, then it becomes easier. I mean, this is
But if we do one,
this is the heavy work right now. This is the part where projects make or die, right? I mean,
I guess timing matters for teachers too, right?
and they look exhausted. I feel the exhaustion vibe. But it's like,
Yes.
Oh, that might be from me too.
here, you know, my kids are like, you know, we need this, we need that.
Might be our teachers, you know.
Some of us have tons of grading to do too.
Right.
Yeah, so.
I mean, that's the other thing, I was not really employed when we jumped with this project, and now I'm like 50 hours a week, so.
Yeah, that, you know, work gets in the way of a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so, let's move on then to our, new business. Gina, I got you first here.
Okay,
So,
and I see there's a copy.
there's a copy of the Sustainable Purchasing Initiative in the back here, which we discussed, we've been discussing for a while now. And the idea was that, last month, Gina gave this to us, those of us were here, and we said, let's, look at this and take a vote on it
Tonight.
and Gina said what we're gonna actually be voting on as well, but that's kind of the idea that this would be.
So I think people are having a chance to read it first.
I think I turned on the-
So I added what Mark had just mentioned, we should connect it to the comprehensive plan and the goals of the city, so the sustainability goals. New York State, again, has done much of the work here identifying products and also has programs for electric vehicles, so it would be trying to do our part to achieve those goals for the city and the state, and use for the work they've done. And any questions on the meeting that we had with city officials, but they're already working in this direction a little bit and seem to be supportive, so. Yeah, if anybody has questions, we were gonna send it next to the infrastructure committee, Bobby Blakeman Infrastructure Committee, which meets at the end of the month, May 1st.
So, yeah, so
Are
this
you
is just,
looking for a motion then?
yeah, this is just basically what making sure that we all agree to endorse, I mean, this is just basically, do we want to endorse this thing and move forward? And if we need to, if we need some little things via email to Gina to fix that up a little bit, I think that'd be.
But we're hoping this is, that we don't have to do that this
Yes.
is the final.
Yeah, because this has been moving around now for a couple of months.
And we got a meeting in 2 weeks, so we can push it forward, that would be great.
Since I hadn't been at the last meeting and didn't see it, I have some ideas for improving this, but if you feel like it's at the point where we should just push it forward, then I don't have to make edit suggestions. They're not content as much as organization and clarity. So, but it's nothing. I mean, it's the form, not the substance. The substance is good.
Yeah, I didn't have any, I mean, what were you thinking?
Two main options. The last paragraph feels like an introduction, or it feels different, like the whole thing is sort of about goals, and the last paragraph is about process, and I wonder if we should pull it out in some way and either make it an introduction or make it.
I strongly think we should keep line 1 as it is, which is what the action
Right.
we're taking. So we recommend as the,
Right.
and so, but other than that,
I mean, or put it at the end, but put a header before it that says sort of background or something like that, just, I mean, because it's all actionable items except for the last paragraph, which is a list of, which is sort of explanatory. That's all I'm thinking. But maybe I'm overthinking it, maybe it doesn't matter.
I think that, I mean, this is not a bill that we're putting forward. It's just a request.
I said, if we're willing to vote on this, that we send it forward tonight,
Yeah.
was that the hope? So if
can we vote yet tonight?
So if you had to make changes, we couldn't vote on it tonight.
I mean, we can do it friendly, I mean, we could do it as amended, it would be fine, but it gets a little bit confusing, so unless it's like something that we're absolutely dead set over my dead body.
Okay, well, let me raise my other concern, which is not over my dead body, but I found confusing the second paragraph where it says reducing employee workplace exposures.
Oh, to hazardous material, or to
So,
hazardous,
right, it needs to say to what they're,
kind of like my deer complaint. In that second,
Well, it's tied to the hazardous emissions, I guess, in my mind.
yeah. I mean, it's fine as well. By reducing, if you read and by their, or you could just by and thereby reducing employee workplace.
Exposures to, I'm looking at 2 words or something.
I think the easiest fix might be the initiative to use greener products would improve environmental quality and reduce employee workplace exposures. So,
I would order it quality, so you start with the general, then you get specific.
what if we, I mean, I'm fine, I trust you, I'm fine passing it with the sort of caveat that you just kind of work on that.
Yeah, I'm not, frankly not gonna do any work until after finals, so as
Yeah.
long as it would, so I couldn't get it back to this committee before we go.
No, I-
Or we wait a month.
No,
But we, I mean, let's move it forward, that's more important.
yeah. The intention here is clear, you know, and like I said, this thing's been bouncing around on emails for 2 months now, so I think,
Yeah.
I think we should just give a motion
Yeah,
to.
and the point of this is quite clear. It's a recommendation to move towards sustainable purchasing using this list.
Ultimately, the council will decide what they.
Right, this is just a
What
recommendation,
direction
this is just asking, hey, look, can you do this? If you look into this, it will help if need be, but we would like the council to start to think about
It just gets
changing purchasing, just to get the ball
somebody's
rolling.
radar, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is just to get it in front of people. All right,
The opening line is the key line in it.
yep,
The
the rest of it is just,
That is almost, yeah.
I mean, it's needed, but it's not, that first sentence.
So that's what we're voting on, really, is the first sentence.
And you have these other URLs that are in blue that actually draw your eyes to that, like the same, your fourth paragraph is kind of important, because that's the resource to find these things. I think it's fine the way it is, it gets the ball rolling.
So do I hear a
We
motion?
can wordsmith somebody else's stuff forever, and it's not gonna be.
It's not change a whole lot. We've all been down that road. All right, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor of moving this forward to the appropriate committee? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. All right. Thank you very much, Gina. It's been months.
So,
Oh, hold on, Mark.
If I could, I'm sure, just a statement, I'll be very happy to bring this article forward this evening to the chair of the committee, and we'll represent this on the 31st in that meeting. If they would like to be there, certainly welcome.
And you made it 5, I think.
5 o'clock. Thank you very much.
what, so what committee does it go to?
Quality of life and infrastructure, kind of a right?
Who
So I
else?
think it's really the infrastructure piece, which is the important piece here. I don't think it needs to go to legislative because there's not a clear legislative action at this point. This is an internal policy about how we would, and I really appreciate that first line as well, how we would begin to endorse the transition to sustainable purchasing practice for the city of Oneonta. I think that's the key thing, so I think that's more kind of internal, it doesn't need to be legislative, so I think that's the appropriate committee for it to go to. So thank you very much to this group for that, and I'll pass it along.
All right. So the last thing is something that I brought up at our last meeting, but it's not official, and the time is, it's not too late.
Oh, yeah.
A few weeks ago, some representative, the Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful initiative was starting for 2022. It's through the Mohawk Valley Economic Development and Development District. And so this is part of the Keep America Clean sort of thing. And so what they're trying to do is get, I believe, 300 groups to sign up to clean up some part of Mohawk Valley, which we are a part. And so I thought, but we are, according to this we are.
We can see it from here.
We're like I said, we're like 3 different economic and regions, and depending on and COVID relation and things like that. So, for the purpose of this discussion, we are. How about the Greater Mohawk Valley region? There we go. And so, what I thought would be a good thing to do would be to maybe find a date where maybe the environmental board does a cleanup. Find a place to do that. It can be any time between now and August, so we don't have to, because they
Looks like this one.
yeah. Well, it's yeah. So, and I thought one of the cool things too about this is that if we go ahead and register this for a date and a place, that we can then make that public, and other people who want to participate can join our efforts as well. That might be a nice way of getting more community engagement. So I think we can do the negotiation of dates and where, online, via email. I think this has to be an official sort of thing, but I just wanted to get see if enough people wanted to do that, and if they thought this would be something that would be beneficial. I think that having us as an organization and then advertising that, we can even get free gloves.
You make a big trash sculpture at the end.
You know,
Red Solo Cup man.
that's what my mom did. When I was little, she took like all the cans there in my bedroom and made like a pyramid for me to get the point to clean them all up. And I was like, that's art, Mom. That thing stayed up for 6 months.
So I think it's a great idea, and I know that the Susquehanna Greenway Committee has been looking at trying to recruit people for 2 places that need cleanup.
Okay.
So one is on New Island, where there are a couple former homeless encampments where people were living in the woods and then just sort of left debris behind. And the other is basically along the Chestnut Street corridor, where a bunch of property owners over the years have just kind of thrown stuff down the embankment.
Oh, yes.
So they're sort of at the edge of the wetlands, there's just a lot of junk. And some of that is city land, which makes it sort of even more applicable.
Yeah.
And a really steep slope, isn't it, going down there then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that second one is a huge task. And
That's the one that's right. Okay, yeah, that one might be a little bit trickier.
well, you could choose any section of like Fonda Avenue, like right at Fonda Avenue. I mean, there's no way we're gonna do the whole mile-long section, but you could choose a spot.
How much of it still city owned?
But that's one that really needs it. I mean,
The first 5 acres
it's
is
a
city.
priority.
Is it? Okay.
The area, right? Well,
That's a
the street is
priority.
really steep there, that is probably full of traffic. That creek that we walked with was like shopping carts in it and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty discouraging.
So, yeah, I mean, the bigger step would be, I guess we can talk to think about and see if you can
City, yeah.
be a part of that. We're not gonna be equipped to handle.
No, I mean, what the Greenway Committee was going to do, the city was going to provide a dumpster that they were gonna leave at a spot. And then the cleanup was just gonna bring stuff to the dumpster, and then the city later was gonna take the dumpster away.
Well, we can figure out those, those details. So what I can do is I can send out, one of those calendar program things, and you guys can just say what times might work, if you're still interested in it, and then we can just figure it out. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be all day, I think, but if we can just get that, and then we can open it up to other people, I think it could be a really good and fun event, and make some of the connections with the city citizens that we've been trying to do over the last year or two.
Would it make sense to think about the events that are coming up in the city that lead to trash and littering and timing it around one of those?
Yeah, we can do that too. What do you mean?
Like we got this weekend is meet me in the streets, so it's fair, everybody's around.
I don't know, I cleaned up so many cigarette butts after like town affairs,
Yeah.
don't want to do that again, but,
Well, it sort of begs the question, you know, keep beautiful, is this an event to like try to deal with a real problem? Or is it more of like, let's have an engagement outdoors and engage the community?
I mean, ultimately, I think it's a real problem. I think any cleanup we do is gonna be important, right? Just in the sense that it's gonna be a lot there. I mean, I'm inclined personally to stay away from some of the events because people just associate those events with trash anyways, right? But if you're actually walking down through some of these areas and you see a shopping cart in a creek, that feels a little bit more impactful for some of the things that we might want to try to do. And, we also have city, or, we have a city, or the event organizers also are supposed to be doing some of that cleanup as well for the event. So having something kind of separate from that is kind of how I'm thinking about it. But I mean,
One thing I would hope would happen is by doing this and getting some publicity out about it, that it helps people start to think about not continuing to litter. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but, people just casually toss things. We see it all over the place. And if there are enough people out doing this kind of stuff and we're getting people engaged and helping to pick it up, more people might think twice before they litter.
That's very optimistic of you.
there are people that are doing this, how are people that are going to be doing it?
It's
No,
lovely.
we get publicity about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think having, and just saying.
Getting people to think about it,
Well, even if you could just say, out of this one, small section of the Greenway, we pulled out, 100 pounds of trash.
Yeah, exactly.
More space to throw stuff.
Well, thank you, it's making it really awkward finding a place to dump that garbage.
Well, this has been studied to death, and it is interesting sort of what, it's norms, it's been norm, and whether the norm is activated or deactivated. And it's deactivated when you have an event and there's already trash and you think you're not responsible.
Mm-hmm.
It's activated when people are watching you. But if part of the problem is frankly teenagers and college students in this town, maybe we need to, cultivate the norm among the youth of our community.
Yes.
So we have to get the teenagers out of bed before noon and get them out there helping us clean
I
up.
agree.
Okay. Maybe at 4.
Okay.
You want to do it this summer.
There used to be one of the Suco organizations on Sunday mornings, almost every Sunday morning, they would go out and clean up trash.
Yeah, both, and then there's a big cleanup day at both colleges.
Yeah.
For service day and stuff like that, and it hasn't changed.
But I think awareness, remember,
When you just shotgun a 6-pack of Bud Light, you're not gonna really be thinking about where you're gonna put those cans. I mean, let's be, well, then in general, but,
don't be a litter bug. It was a great campaign. It made people think about it.
But I do think though that I mean, and getting more kids to do stuff, younger, you know, I do wonder how our
Need to
children.
create an app for it, you could. Like a Pokemon Go litter cleanup app.
There you go. Yes, Mark.
Just got one more thing I probably should mention in my communication, but really quickly, just want to let you all know that there's a mountain bike race in the park, Old Park, this weekend.
It's been a year already.
It has been a year already. So I think that there's room for volunteers if people are interested, but certainly spectators and cheering and cowbells are all part of the fun. So if you're interested, I mention it because this group in the past has been, done a lot of work in terms of the trails and the trail system, trying to support that from a safe perspective. And so all that work over many years by many different people, including this board, has led to the fact that we have a really cool mountain bike race. I think this is the third one will be this year there. So throw it out there if you want to visit. I think the first race goes off 9:30ish and
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. It's for high school students and middle school
Middle school,
students, both boys and girls. So it's a
I
great.
caught part of it last year. It was
Yeah.
pretty fun.
Yeah, it is. So it's really kind of fun to see them get real excited and they're out there working hard. So I'm trying to.
It's gonna be nice weather,
Perfect weather.
It is.
not too much mud.
Yeah, it's good up there. The trail is in good shape. So.
All right, so I will send out some planning stuff about that then, for the cleanup in the next couple of weeks. I know everybody's going to be kind of busy, so don't stress too much about it. Anything else?
I have a Susquehanna Greenway announcement, which is that the trail that we've been working on along Railroad Avenue from Pond Avenue is slowly moving forward. The latest thing is that this week, the trees, you may have noticed that in Huntington Park, they cut down a bunch of trees on that trail road. Some of those trees we're taking, the city's going to deliver them over to Pond Avenue and they're going to be repurposed as bridges.
No.
So,
Excellent. There we go. Reuse.
yeah. So I'm excited that that trail, because the two things that have prevented it from moving forward partly is bureaucracy and wet spots. And I can't overcome the bureaucracy exactly, but
We can throw down some branches and some logs and
overcome the wet spots.
there you go. All right. Excellent. Well, nothing else. Let's adjourn.